I'm Michael Matthews. While driving through the mountains of Colorado about a year ago, my mind wandered back to my childhood, and I thought about Alabama.
My dad was a lifer in the Army, which explains why I was raised in Phoenix City, a relatively small town in eastern Alabama. Phoenix City, you see, is right across the river from Fort Benning, Georgia, the largest infantry army base in the world. That made access to Phoenix City very easy, and in the 40s and early 50s, Phoenix City was known as Sin City for the entertainment it provided for the troops. With a weekend pass in hand, they would venture across the bridge over the mighty Chattahoochee River and indulge in gambling, women, and moonshine, all illegal at the time. After the Attorney General was murdered, the National Guard was brought in to keep order, and all the slot machines were piled up and destroyed. Phoenix City went back to being a normal town in the South by the time I came along. I remember walking across a train trestle that crossed the Chattahoochee to save 20 minutes of walking time when my friends and I would go over to Columbus to movies or shopping. As we walked across, we could see the raging river below, always looking down to make sure each footstep landed on a railroad tie. Back then, it seemed to take forever to get all the way across. The train wasn't visible until the last minute as it turned to go west across the river. That experience certainly taught me courage. Idlehour Park was an amusement park with Ferris wheels, a swimming pool, roller coasters, bowling, and huge swings in the park that seemed to hang below 100 feet of chain and would send you 30 feet off the ground in both directions. I remember my pet German Shepherd named Queenie. She was my best friend, and I would ride her around everywhere, clinging to her back. I remember my first bike, a Swen Stingray, with butterfly handlebars and a racing slick for the back tire. I rode it everywhere. One of the things I remember most was a traditional bike ride covering 5 miles each way, from my house to Chicken Comer's Barbecue off 14th Street. My dad would send me on my bike to get 5 plates on Saturdays, because he didn't want to fight the traffic and have to look for a parking spot. There was always a line, but it was interesting to see all the different types of people standing, waiting for barbecue, in the sunshine on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Don't ride too fast, and be sure to miss all the bumps, otherwise you'll spill the sauce. Be careful, he would say. There were always kids gathered around the barbecue pit, out back, and an older black man sitting there, minding the meat, as it cooked over the hot white coals down below. I never lingered too long. I would get the plates, secure them in the basket on the front of my bike, and then ride slowly home, like I was carrying 5 dozen eggs. The meat was tender, the sauce was spicy hot, the bread was so soft, and I always had a big glass of homemade sweet tea ready before I would start tearing into the barbecue, because it would sizzle through and through as you ate it all down. It was a weekly tradition for our family. As I became a teenager and could drive, I ate there more and more. It was a magical place. It was always good to go off-peak to miss all the crowds. Then you could talk to the friendly, smiling people that worked there. After high school, I moved away, but every trip back to see my mom and dad would have to begin with a trip to Chicken Comer's. We caught up on things while we ate Comer's Barbecue. We would say it has a power all its own. When I moved to Colorado and my parents came to visit, I would call with a strong warning. Don't forget the barbecue. My 3 kids loved it too, and it became more of a delicacy to eat it just 3 or 4 times a year. My dad came to visit alone once, and I waited for him to get off the plane until I realized no more people were exiting. 2 or 3 minutes went by, and I started to worry. I knew he was on the plane. Finally, he walked slowly up the ramp. I asked him if he was all right, and he could only say, "I forgot the barbecue. I am so sorry, son." He had been sitting on the plane, afraid to get off and meet me, without the traditional barbecue carry-on bag draped over his shoulder. That was the first and last time he ever forgot the barbecue. Get the idea how important Chicken Comer's Barbecue was to me?
Type bag you should use because it'll hold just about enough.
After making films for years, I've decided that the Chicken Comer's Barbecue story needs to be told. So I decided to place an ad in the local newspapers around Phoenix City, asking people to come forward and tell me the story of Chicken Comer. In the process of doing research, I met a news reporter for the Columbus Ledger named Brad Barnes. He interviewed me over the phone from my home in Colorado and wrote a great article describing my film project and asking for people who know the story to come forward. I've made 3 trips to Alabama and talked to over 60 people in person or on the phone. It has been an incredible journey, based on everything I now know. Here is the story of Chicken Comer's barbecue. His name was Anderson Comer, Sr. His name alone is cause for discussion.
I can't sit here and prove it and say that was his name, because all we used to call him was Mr. Chicken.
His son was named Anderson. I never did know his real name. I always called him Mr. Comer.
To my knowledge, he cooked very little chicken, even though that's how he got his name.
Right.
Because he used to raise chickens and cook them. But once he started his restaurant, he went strictly pork.
His grandparents were slaves to the Comer family and lived on Rose Hill in Columbus. And that's how he came about the name Comer. His name, because his grandfather adopted the Comer name, and so did his father, and Chick adopted the Comer name.
But who was Chicken Comer, really?
He was just a good man, and he had probably some of the best barbecue that you've ever put your mouth on.
He's a very quiet man, but he was a very stern man too. You know,
he never bothered nobody. I say he just did his barbecue.
I remember Chick was a very pleasant man. He always had a smile on him.
I'll never forget he was left-handed.
He was a good barbecue man.
I can say he was a great man. He was good to everybody, black or white. And if he could help you, he would. And he didn't let anybody go hungry. If he know you was hungry, you got something to eat, if he had something.
And he was well respected, and he was kind to everybody.
I remember Chicken Comer in particular because he was such a kind, sweet man. His spirit was so good. His reputation is that he raised a lot of children that weren't his in Phoenix City, Alabama. And he was as good to them as he was his own children.
He was a likable person. The first time you met him, he knew you and you knew him. From then on, he was just that type of fella.
I used to play around out there by the pit where he was barbecuing. And you know how smoke seems to follow you?
Right.
And I never forgot this because Papa told me this. Yeah, I said something like, Papa, the smoke keeps following me. He said, smoke follows ugly people. So I never forgot that.
I can see him today coming in that back door at the pawn shop. He was just such a sweet man. Always had a smile on his face.
Chicken and Felix Edmonds were the big dogs. Everybody listened to Felix and they listened to Chicken.
Very likable guy, very down to earth, worked hard, struggled to make a living, put all his kids through school.
He was a mild-mannered black fella, and he knew how to meet the public, and he knew how to barbecue. He had his own method on his hot sauce. He was a well-thought-of man. He was a good businessman. He was smart, but he was from the old breed, just like I am. If you do something, do it right, or don't do it. He appeared to be the kind that he'd help if he could. Just like the other day, a fellow approached me, he was hungry. I said, I'll buy you breakfast, but I won't give you any money. But everybody thought well of him.
He was just a humble man and quiet. He's very quiet.
He was a humble black man, really. But now, he wouldn't let you give him no junk. He'd stand on his feet, he'd be nice to you and courteous and humble, but you didn't push him. That's how everybody ought to be.
Well, he was a quiet black man who cooked some of the best pork barbecue with a mustard-based sauce that anyone ever has. And he did it for the better part of 40 years. He had his own special way of cooking the meat and preparing the sauce. He took his special techniques to the grave with him. In 1929, Chicken Comer, who lived in a house on 14th Place, started selling barbecue from his backyard.
They had a big house out in the backyard. He had a hole in the yard, put some bricks around it, and put a piece of wire on the top, and that's how he barbecued, started barbecue.
For a while before that, he would get together with a friend, Grandpa Griggs, at his place on Seal Road, and slaughter and barbecue pork on Friday nights. That's probably where he got some ideas on how he wanted to make his own version of the barbecue and sauce for the day when he would sell his own.
My granddaddy, Wilson Griggs, her granddaddy's brother. My granddaddy's the one that he was in the cattle business, and he would sell and buy cattle and all. and him and Chicken Comer started out together in the business. Well, to start with, he and my granddaddy barbecued in back of our house, which was off of Old Seal Road. And he would buy the hogs and all, you know, and they'd butcher them there together. We had what we called hog killing day back then. They would start selling it out of the backyard, you know. They were just always good friends. And, you know, he started his own business. But that's how it originally got started, was in my granddaddy's backyard. And he made a grill that went over this hole that Chicken and my granddaddy used to barbecue on top of. And you just couldn't hardly wait, you know, they got through that barbecue.
And they experimented on the sauce and kept cooking and cooking. And they would get it thin, they would do it thick.
But the main thing with this sauce that people don't understand, you can mix it up all day long, but you have got to let that sauce come to a boil for 3 minutes and then re-put it back into the gallon jug or in the quart.
He dug a hole in the ground, lined up some bricks, laid some mesh wire on top, and built a fire. He sliced up some pork Boston butts and put them on the grill. As they cooked, he basted the meat with a chinaberry stick with a towel tied around the end. The towel got dipped in a mixture of salt water and lemon juice to keep the fire from blazing up and keep the meat moist while it cooked to perfection.
I think Phoenix City has the best barbecue anywhere in the South myself.
I can remember the old wood building used to be down there. Little small building, that's where he used to serve at. Like it might have been a storage room, what it really looked like.
Mr. Snelling owned all that stuff. You remember Frank Snelling? The lumber yard on Railroad Street.
Of course, we owned the building, and the rent was about $20 a month.
Wooden shack with no paint on it. No paint. I guess grease was the paint of it. Sort of greasy. No tables sit on. Everything was to go. You'd have to go outside, sit down on the ground, eat it, take it home with you.
He operated in the wooden shack from the late 1930s until the early 1950s, when the wooden shack was about ready to fall down, and the health department was probably on chick to fix it up or simply build a new place. In about 1951, he built the concrete block building.
Open pit barbecue outside. You have them old, what kind of tables? They look like old picnic tables. It was just very good. And I loved it. I go down there a lot of times by myself after I turned 16.
2 sides, and I remember it seems to me like it was a colonial bakery screen door on each side. And one side was for white patrons and one side was for black patrons.
Yeah, that house used to be. That house had, see, 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms and a kitchen.
And a big back porch.
And a big back, wasn't no great old big back porch. Wasn't no porch like that up there.
And there was some young boys who were working there. And they had to go to lunch like 12 o'clock. And it'd be crowded, you know, over there at 12 o'clock. And they would get in that ambulance. They were young boys, they're teenagers. They would turn on the siren and make everybody go to the side and they get in front and go get their barbecue.
Strangest thing to me, he had the place segregated, you know, whites on one side and blacks on the other one, and I thought that was kind of odd, you know, being that he was a black man that owned it, the business.
I ain't never seen him he owned no car, not that I know of. Always got around though.
He would walk down from Poplar Springs every Saturday, and it was good 3 or 4 miles down to the pawn shop, and then he'd walk back home. And he was always in good health until the very end. I don't remember him ever being sick a day.
Well, he had that little small place there, Friday and Saturday thing, you couldn't get up that road.
You got to have the right kind of wood, hickory and the oak wood. I think hickory oak wood.
Yeah, he had a little place outside he barbecued. Right. Put the wood, he used hickory wood. That's all he used. He used charcoal. He didn't use a charcoal tar. Just use that wood.
What kind of wood did he use? Oak.
When you use oak wood makes a char, so he doesn't cook it until that wood burns all the way down and it's like a coal.
He said oak wood, the smoke give it a better taste. I believe that it was oak. Mm-hmm. And he would have a great big old log about like that and about this big around, and he put it, see, they'll burn, then he would take the coals and shove it back, you know, where the meat was.
A rag mop, and that's the way he would put it over his, like a towel. When he'd be cooking, he'd put that would be water salt, though, and put it in a basin by the pit. And every now and then he sprinkle that water on there to flame from being so high. And the meat had a little season in it, and then he bring it in.
Well, Chick would sit there in that barbecue pit, you know, all day. That's how I learned the word Boston butt. That's why I learned that from him.
The shoulder portion of the hog is divided into two sections, called Boston butt and the picnic. The butt comes from the upper part of the front shoulder. In pre-revolutionary New England and into the Revolutionary War, some pork cuts were packaged into these wooden barrels, also known as butts, for storage and shipment. The way the hog shoulder was cut in the Boston area became known as Boston butt, and that name stuck. Today, Boston butts call that almost everywhere, except Boston.
Mr. Chicken, all right, you all that fire there, but the meat don't burn. And he said, no, what? He said, you actually cooking with the smoke. You use some of the heat, but most of it is smoke that is cooked with, he said.
You know, had to cut the meat up and put 3 pieces. The butts come, you know, kind of big, and they sew them in the 3 pieces. That way they cook faster and easier.
And he had a great big open pit, and it was not closed in any way. He had just tons of butts on there.
Pretty much, well, ever since I've been around the business, we've always had pretty good cooks. Now, because my mom liked her meat to be cooked a specific way.
And the smell, the aroma from the pit, you can smell it for, I guess, a radius maybe half of a mile. You know, it had that fragrant like hickory smoke.
And we were fascinated with the aroma, because in the whole community, wherever you were working, you could smell that aroma of chicken coma barbecue.
Anyway, chicken coma said if you cut it with a slicing machine, so that's the reason people up north didn't sell no barbecue. It's not fitting deep when you slice it with a slicing machine. You got to cut it with a knife. Boning knife, and sometimes he'd use one of them old skinny knives. You know, you go over that country and they'll slice it off one of them there confounded slicing machines. You know, you feel insulted.
And it'd just be paper thin slices, and just absolutely to die for.
You can be taught how to cut, but you're going to come into your own style of cutting. But when you get to that level where you can cut as fast as you want to cut, or somebody wants something, you can cut the meat exactly the way they want it, then that's when you learn how to cut, then you're officially a cutter.
There's nothing like chicken combers. The outside meat's the way to go, too. The hard, burned outside, you got to get it outside meat.
And they were paper plates. Paper, they would absorb the sauce you put in there. When you get through eating, the paper would be real yellow.
No, brothers do nothing like that. Nothing but go there and answer would slice that meat very thin and put it in that plate and put that sauce on there. 3 or 4 pieces of bread. That was it.
I worked down there.
Yes,
I put those plates on my own job. Remember how we didn't have trays. And so we stacked the plates on your arm and they let me do it. One summer I made $11.
And you would go in your respective side and go up to the line and order. On the 50-cent plate, you got enough meat and sauce and bread to have 3 sandwiches.
While chicken was still alive, there were no scales. He just eyeballed it.
And I bought barbecue at a lot of places over there sell barbecue, but none of their sauce tastes like this that Chicken Coma had. It was real good. I said it got to be good to keep the people coming.
He was a very pleasant man. I remember just going there, he'd always have a smile on his face. He'd sit up there on that stool and you tell him what you wanted, and that old mop that he used, dog, that thing must have been 40 years old. I think what it is, that sauce heated up after a while. He used it till it wasn't nothing left of it. We don't care, it was good.
They claimed it was a Chinese berry stick and an old undershirt. It didn't make no difference what he had on there. That barbecue was good.
I could take a order, but they didn't let me really touch the meat or anything. It was just something to droop down like that. With the sauce on it, I got to put the sauce on it. There was a towel. When I remember, it was a towel tied around. That's what they used to put the sauce.
Right. And he had a sauce. My father said many people offered him a lot of money to ask Chick to give them that recipe for that sauce he had. But he made that sauce, he wouldn't tell nobody what the recipe was.
You know, most anybody can get out there and put your meat out there and cook it, but it was the sauce. Everybody would love the sauce. And I wouldn't have noticed much about it if I hadn't been in there with my grandmama when she was making it. And she sent me in get that sauce that night. And we thought we heard Uncle No scratching under the table. We had that gallon of sauce in our home, and we were running through that big old house, and we were sliding it, but you know, we didn't drop that sauce. Come Mother would have killed us. Yeah, my grandmama used to make that sauce all the time. Yeah, Lou Bell used to make the sauce all the time. Cause Chick wasn't even in the house when she was making the sauce. She was making the sauce, and I was in there.
Yeah, people come in there and ask you what y'all put in the sauce, or y'all want to say the sauce name and stuff like that. But, you know, they never could give out names.
Wish I had some of that sauce. That sauce was straight, man.
So I think that's the main reason they like Chicken Coma barbecue. On account of that sauce. Where you mix it and how you do it. You got to be, like I said, they wrote down on no recipe thing. You have to go by your instinct or whatever they call it.
His sauce was a mustard-based sauce, and it was hot. And a lot of people have said the closer you got to dipping in the bottom of the sauce, it was made in a great big pot. And they used to have a limb, and I've heard it was a China berry limb. Now I'm not so sure about that, but they had a limb with a rag tied around it. And if you wanted real hot sauce, they would go down to the bottom where all the peppers settled, and they would douse it down in there and then douse it on your chopped meat. And then you have a real hot plate of sauce. And if you didn't want it so hot, they'd dip on the top.
I always got me a large Coke so I could chase it down because it was hot. But that's what made it so good, and I think that's why I kept coming back, was because of the hot sauce, and it seemed to be a recipe that nobody could ever duplicate.
They had a drink machine in there, and you never could. They never had it in change where if you had $1, you just didn't get a drink. You had to bring. If you didn't have the right change, you just had to eat without the drink.
It's got the little mustard peps in it, but it doesn't have the red peppers, the cayenne red pepper in it. That's beat up and done powder pulverized. We got to teach Keith how to make Chicken Coma's barbecue sauce.
That's just the futuristic sauce. I know how to make the old sauce too. I got something coming for him.
Because a lot of people don't know that sauce really could knock a common cold out of you. You know what I mean? I mean, people use drinking this sauce for medical reasons. You know what I'm saying? Like you never wanted to stop eating it. You always wanted to keep that taste in your mouth. Like I could just eat this all day long.
It seemed like your mouth would burn for 30 minutes after you eat it. But it was good.
Yeah, his granddaughter would know. See, nobody would ever get the original recipe out of them people. You're lucky, man, if you can get some of the original, because everybody around here, man, that stuff like gold.
Chick died with that recipe. No one got it. We used to take bread. We would take it and pour it in our plate, and we'd just get the bread soggy and we would eat it. See, the hot sauce that they have now is just like water. But at that time, his hot sauce, barbecue sauce, was thick. It was thick. You could sop it like you do syrup.
You know, the sauce, if you analyze what the sauce was and realize when he started was during the Depression, and you think about white people had a tough time, black people, you can't even start to imagine what kind of time they must have had. It's basically water, vinegar, mustard, everything's cheap, salt, red pepper is what gives it the flavor that it's got. Now, I don't have the recipe, but I know what's in it. I used to kind of sneak and watch what they had in the bottles and the cans that they threw away. The secret ingredient that really gives it that unique flavor, it gives it, well, you can, if you can take it and put it in a little vinegar or something, you can sense the flavor that's unique to chicken comas barbecue. Not that there's not other people that have used it. I mean, you'll find it in other barbecue sauces also. Had an old hickory stick that was just polished like it was waxed, and he would wrap like an old sheet or pillowcase or something around it, and he'd drop that down in his sauce and drizzle it around on the meat. And he would stand there and slice this stuff and put it into a pepper's plate, and then he would reach over to his hickory stick down in the slop jar full of sauce and drizzle this sauce, just float the meat in it. It's called a sopping sauce.
Financially, he could have been a multi-millionaire because he sold the barbecue.
Well, Chick really didn't know how. He was just a big man, right? In this community, black man in this community, he didn't know anything about the real business. He didn't know.
And I remember when he used to sell Boston butts barbecue, and we used to be able to buy that Boston butts at that time had skins on it. And we used to go down there and buy a dime worth of skins and stuff, and you would be full.
He sold just as many skins as he did barbecue, and they would come in there and I want a plate of skin, and they was the great big old skin. But you know how he cooks them? In a great big old black wash pot.
Anderson would pull that skin off of that meat, get a whole big plate of skins, and he put the hot sauce on it and some bread, and you go crazy eating that stuff. You're making me hungry now, just talking about it now.
And we would have the skin and we would dip it in the hot sauce. They was so good.
We used to get them skins though. See, Boston butts now don't have skins on them. But when he used to cook that meat, we used to go in there and give him a dime and get a plate of skin, put that hot sauce on it.
Good. All kind of animals to him. He would barbecue it.
Get them goats fat on chicken feed, take them around there, make me a good sale, $1.50. I'd go back there later and pay him 50 cents for a big old pile of barbecue. I didn't care if it was goat, hog, or what. Whatever he cooked, he knew how to cook it, and it was real good.
And you know, one thing I really like about this whole thing, you go in there and get a plate to go, and always put it in an old sack. You know, and when you get where you're going, it'd be run all in the sack and everything else. And you'd have to take a sack and pour it back in your plate. That's one thing that I really remember well. And
you had to go get that meat every day because there wasn't a refrigerator in there.
And the colonial bread, had a big rack of bread. Bread man came every day. And the bread was always as fresh and soft. He cooked me some chickens one time. Chicken wasn't something he cooked. And I took about 6 chickens around there, and he wrapped them in this fat and cooked them for me. They were great. I mean, they were really good.
I even remember in high school, some of the clubs would haze you, and the hazing was you had to drink a cup of chicken coma sauce.
And that was part of the hazing ritual?
Yeah, if you could drink that, then you in.
And that house would go in, his wife was named Lulabelle. They had a big rug, and it was like a lion's face. It was just spread around, and they had so much of antique, pretty furniture in there. You know, real rich house.
We would love to see their mother, Miss Lulabelle. We call her Miss Lulabelle Comer. And she would wear those great, big, beautiful hats with the real wide brim, you know. She loved her hats. And very seldom you would see her. She would be in the house. She never came in the cafe. She was a dressing lady. She really did wear her clothes.
Now he thought the sun rise and set in her. He used to say all the time, she gonna be a genius. She gonna be a and all she had to do was go and say, Papa, I want this. He was gonna get it.
But he was Papa. He was her granddad.
He's my granddad. And we was with him until he died. I would be down there because my mama used to be there sometimes. Mm-hmm. And my dad was in there. He was, cutting the meat and fixing the meat because Chick would be at the pit most of the time.
The poem was about how my papa took care of everything for us. You know, he was our guardian. It says, "Fix it, Papa." Next door, Robert Lee, the deputy sheriff, again had beaten Doll, his wife, my nursemaid, who fried my bacon just right and took me to pick blackberries in the woods. Papa, your loaded shotgun was where a 5-year-old could reach it, on the floor, between the wall and the cherry oak headboard you carved. So I dragged it out by the trigger and snuggled it under my arm and pulled it past the rocking chair that you'd made for me, and out the door and down the 10 new wooden steps you'd put up. I bounced the butt until I reached the moist backyard, and I strained with it past my bike that, after your paint job, shined red even in the shade of the giant mulberry tree. At first you didn't see me as you loomed under the wooden shelter behind Chicken Comer's, where you barbecued boneless pork butts over a deep pit, stirred up your special sauce, and got ready for your customers. I grunted as I lifted the shotgun to you. Papa, shoot Bobby Lee, and I repeated Doll's cry. I'm tired of his damn shit. You snatched up the shotgun. When I saw it 2 days later, it was locked behind the glass door of the wooden case you'd built high on the wall over the mantel. The bullets were boxed and at the back of the top shelf of the china cabinet. That same day, Bobby Lee drove off with his suitcase, and Doll made me a blackberry pie.
Yeah, because Mama died 66 and he died 2 years later.
68.
He died in 68. Cause Chick didn't, I guess, sick. He wasn't down. He just had a heart attack and died. He wasn't sick. You know, somebody had to run it for him. He died coming from going to the meat house to get his meat for that day, and he had a heart attack in the car where the man carried him to get his meat. And he was 80-something years, and he was walking, and he would get people to carry him to get his meat. You know.
That's how he made his living, and of course his family continued to run after Chick's death. I went to Chick's funeral when he died. I've been to a governor's funeral, didn't have that many people there. There was that many people. He was that well thought of in the community.
I even remember he was up in his 70s when he confessed Christ. He was an old man when he confessed Christ. Sure did, but he did confess it before he died. That's a good thing. That's one good thing about it.
Many people attended his funeral. He was definitely a famous man and very well liked by all people. Chicken Comer was a humble man. He certainly made good money selling barbecue, but he was generous with it and helped lots of people who needed a little help to get by or a plate of good barbecue when they were hungry. He raised many children as his own, caring for them in every way because he cared about all people and was an unselfish person through and through. A girl named Burdell had moved from Sylvania, Georgia, and Chick had raised her just like his own daughter. Even before Chick died, he told her that he wanted her to carry on the barbecue business after he was gone. After 1968, Burdell did just that. From the same block building, Burdell made and sold the pork meat and spicy sauce for many years after Chicken died. She made the sauce as close as she could to the way he made it, but it was a little different. Chick never measured anything, so the way to make the sauce was all in his head. Therefore, it wasn't an easy task to try and duplicate the original sauce. Burdell tried her best, though. Just after Chick died, his granddaughter, Maud Shepard, told Burdell that if she wanted to continue using the name Chicken Comer's Barbecue on the restaurant, she would have to pay a royalty for using the name. Burdell immediately changed the name to Cromwell's Barbecue. It stayed that way from 1968 until the early 80s, when Burdell's health started to fail. My mom and dad still lived in Phoenix City during those years. I remember coming to visit them and going to the same place for Chicken Comer's Barbecue. I didn't even care about the name being Cromwell's. It was still Chicken Comer's Barbecue to me.
Doll, now she was a good-hearted person.
Very liberal.
Yeah, and she would give you anything, almost the clothes off her back. It was necessary you asked her for anything.
She was there supportive, very supportive of him. Our cousin, we brought her here from Swainsboro, Georgia. And
she started working for Chick.
Yeah, she was already working for him. And when he died, she just took the business and carried it on. That's the way that was. Wasn't no turnover to her at all.
She moved out like in the early 50s, and she married to this guy named Cromwell.
And she was a good friend until, I found out that she had passed. I met her through my husband at the time. He was my fiance then. He took me over there. I met her. She was good people. Started working for her. And she paid for my wedding.
Well, I met Cromwell back in 66,
63. Her and I were working for a chicken coma at the time.
I answered the phone, Comer's Barbecue. Comer's Barbecue? I got the wrong number. Hung up. Called back, the same number. And she said, well, tell them it's chicken coma. They didn't know what you're talking. I said, this chicken coma. I want to put in an order.
Just that name, Where the sauce go, it didn't matter. But the name chicken coma, that what stands out. The old man chicken coma.
I grew up there. My house is maybe from here to that parking lot to the restaurant. And when I started there, Burdell had the place, her and her husband. And Mary was working there also. So it was me and Mary.
It was tons of people in there, and it was a lot of fun. They all were nice people to work for. They really was. I've never worked for anybody, any better people than them.
I worked at evening time when I got off from my job. And I would come in home, and then I worked there till, sometimes be at night. And I was taking the plates to the table and help clean up the place when they close up. And I was real young. You know how children love to make money, so I did make me a little change to get me by. But they were some good people.
In the early 70s, a woman named Mary Screws began working at Cromwell's. She was the great niece of Chicken Comer. Her and Burdell became just like a mother and daughter. They were very close and would cover for each other as they tended to running the family restaurant and raising all their kids. When their kids got old enough, guess where they went to work? Correct, in the barbecue place. All the kids learned to do everything, from cooking the meat to slicing the meat to serving customers and the customary stacking of barbecue plates all along an outstretched arm.
I worked with Mary, and she just really made you feel at home. If you made a mistake, she didn't mind. She didn't make a big deal about it.
Fussing.
It was none of that.
Everybody got along.
Everybody did. It was so much fun working for her. She made you feel really at home. She may not know you from Adam, but she made you feel really at home.
She was just that friendly type person.
In the summer of 1980, several anonymous callers to the Russell County Health Department claimed that someone had gone down to Chicken Comer's barbecue and performed a surprise inspection. What they found was incredible. The cook out back was barbecuing a dog, and there were other carcasses hanging there. The rumor got bigger and bigger, way out of control. Who would start such a ridiculous rumor? Could it have been owners or friends of other barbecue places around Phoenix City? Chicken Comer's was very, very successful, and the competition for the barbecue dollar in Phoenix City is fierce. It all turned out to be totally false, of course. The health department did several inspections and posted notices on the front door of Comer's to reassure potential customers. But it took a while for all the loyal customers to come back. But they all eventually did. In the late 70s, Mary Screws had 3 kids, triplets. She had 3 boys named Keith, Kenneth, and Keldrick. Possibly due to the 5 kids she now had, in about 1980, Mary and her husband Willie went to a place called the Esquire Lounge in Smith Station, about 14 miles away from the original location, and opened their own barbecue place, selling barbecue from the place that had previously been a nightclub. Willie knew he was taking a chance because it was so far out from Phoenix City, where all of his friends and customers lived. Would they follow him to a place that far away? Why would they go way out there when Burdell was still running Cromwell's in the same location in Phoenix City? Against those tall odds, the Esquire Lounge was successful, to a point.
Great hot dogs in the Esquire Lounge, yeah. It was just too far to travel for people. You got to think about people who get off work, go to lunch break at 12 o'clock, and got to be back at 1 o'clock. She made money out of the Esquire Lounge, which is shocking. It was too far. It was just too far for her.
As Burdell's health faded in 1982, her children weren't sure whether they wanted to continue the business their mother had run for 14 years. While they contemplated what to do, Willie and Mary decided they had been in Smith Station for long enough, close to 2 years, and moved back into Phoenix City, into a location on 10th Avenue, just a few miles from where Chicken Comer had lived. Burdell passed away, and her children eventually just let the cafe close due to tax problems. Willie and Mary called their restaurant Chicken Comer's Barbecue, and all their customers came back, plus all the customers who had been going to Cromwell's. The Cromwell children didn't feel they had been given enough time to ponder their options to continue the family barbecue cafe or not. So in 1982, at the new Chicken Comer's on 10th Avenue, business was booming. Willie and Mary had more business than they knew what to do with. The one problem with the building they had chosen was the limited seating, but most people had been very used to getting the barbecue to go for years, so lots of people continued to pick it up and just eat it at home.
She moved in that building. And instantly, our customers, it was right around the way, you know what I'm saying, from everywhere. It was really like a real country atmosphere. You come in there and see potato chips on the wall.
But the little one, the little old one, she really did a lot of business there. I don't think anybody could sit in that one much. But they still came and took takeout food. Came from miles around. I was hoping she would do good because this is what she wanted, you know. Because she did good. Yeah. She bought a house and, you know, I said, well.
Customers were real patient because I've seen times when we was really like outsold, you know, no meat done, no meat ready, you know what I'm saying? But a whole line of customers outside.
After several years on 10th Avenue, Willie decided they needed a bigger place with lots of seating and better facilities. So they got a business loan and built a $100,000 brick building, about a block from the 10th Avenue location. They moved in and business continued strong. They operated out of the brick building for about 8 years until 1998. Mary's health faded and she was hospitalized for many months at a time. She left the running of the barbecue place to Willie and her sons. Her family continued to run the business, but without the strict supervision and Mary's discipline in running the place, the little things just didn't get done. In 1998, the sheriff arrived and closed the business down because the sales tax hadn't been paid properly.
She got discouraged, but she never showed a sign of weakness.
There wasn't a Chicken Comer's restaurant for almost 2 years.
People was around the city like, okay, all right, we know y'all closed down, but dang, y'all got to open back up. We got to eat some barbecue.
In the year 2000, a man named Ken Burgess approached Mary Screws with an offer to become partners and reopen Chicken Comer's Barbecue. Mary would make the sauce, and Ken would put up money to remodel an old gas station on the corner of Broad and Dillingham Streets and reopen the restaurant. In 2000, Chicken Comer's reopened. One thing that Ken Burgess had also done was form Chicken Comer's Incorporated, created a website to sell the sauce worldwide, and trademarked the name Chicken Comer. Mary had patented the process for making the sauce in the early 1980s. As part of the agreement between Ken and Mary, Ken gained possession of the famous sauce recipe. It's obvious that Ken Burgess has a recipe for one version of the Chicken Comer barbecue sauce. Burdell had a version. Mary had a version. There is only one recipe to make the original Chicken Comer's barbecue sauce. It passed with Chicken Comer in 1968.
The man had it like that, and there is nobody that ever copied it.
He had put a camera on, like, over the bed. See, the storage room, the walls didn't go to the ceiling. They would stop so high, you know what I'm saying? So you could go over, you could look over the wall or whatever. He had a electricity come and install a camera in the crack, and she made me put up this wall. This is what I had to do every day. I come in, I gotta stack boxes behind me so people can't see me make the sauce. You know what I mean? And she saw this camera. She said, Keith, is that a camera up there? And I climbed on the sink, I looked over there, I looked, that is a camera. And I went in the back and saw it hooked up. And I remember thinking to myself, there are some like low down people in this world. I said, if you gotta stoop to that level, when you gotta put a camera in there on somebody to make some sauce, maybe it's not for you. I mean, that's like the invasion of your privacy, or, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's totally disrespecting your business partner. You're not respecting, he didn't respect her part of the business at all.
The business operated on Dillingham for a few years. Then Ken decided to open another location in Columbus, across the river in Georgia. He called the new place Chicken Comer's 2. Employees shuffled back and forth, and both places seemed to be doing a good business. In 2001, Ken sold the Columbus location to Stanley Barker, a local car dealer. Shortly thereafter, due to unpaid taxes, the Dillingham location was shut down, again by a sheriff. Stanley Barker ran Chicken Comer's 2 in Columbus for about 8 months, then sold the business to another car dealer, Carolyn Curitan. She had never been in the restaurant business before, but has owned it ever since 2002, and is still running it today. There was certainly a lot of confusion about the use of the Chicken Comer name and the making of the hot sauce and calling it the original Chicken Comer barbecue sauce. I'm sure it will all be sorted out someday. Carolyn has run the Columbus location for about 3 years now. She has left the place basically the same. She has added a mild version of the sauce and many side dishes like scrambled hot dogs, potato salad, chicken fingers, desserts, and so forth. The sign out front reads The Original Chicken Comer's Barbecue. Carolyn runs a clean, efficient restaurant there in Columbus. To me, it's a modernized version of what once was. But maybe that's what it takes these days to be successful in running a restaurant business. In the old neighborhood, the people who have lived there all their lives sit on the front porch and imagine how it used to be, with all the cars lined up and people walking for blocks to get some good barbecue. It was a different time back then. It was much safer, and you wouldn't think anything about sitting out on the front porch in the evening, even as it got dark. These days, as one resident put it, you'd best be on the inside when it gets dark around here. It's just not safe. Keith Screws talks often about selling the barbecue or putting the sauce on the market so it would be sold in grocery stores.
If I could open Chicken Comer's tomorrow, that would be my whole life. I would dedicate my heart, body, and soul to it, make sure it prospered. I would like to show her what she's taught me. I could carry it on forever to my kids.
About 4 or 5 years ago, I found my father. And I remember them calling me to tell me, they got some bad news. Could I please come? I had to go see this man, ease his part in some way. He calls me up. He's on his deathbed, right? And I'm already coming, and I get another phone call from them. And I'm thinking, oh God, what now? Can I please go by and bring him some Chicken Comer's barbecue sauce if the place is still there? So I went and got it and, toted it on the airplane with me. And the first thing he said, other than, God, I can't believe it's you kind of thing, was, oh God, you've really got it. And he just was excited. He got him some Chicken Comer's barbecue sauce, had the nurses bring him some chicken, like right then, so he could eat it. I took it to him too, and he ate it, and he died right after that, and, joked up until the last minute about his last meal being his Chicken Comer's.
Time, everything have changed. Time bring on a change. And I can sit up here on my sister's porch and look down there a lot of eating. We can sit back and just say that we had some good times when the place was open.
Even now, you miss it. There are a lot of copycats. One of the restaurants here sell a sauce that's about 75% Chicken Comer's. So I buy the sauce from them, but I can't eat the pork. They give you a large amount of barbecue, just like Chicken Comer, but it's still not Chicken Comer. You still, those of us that like I said, grew up around them, like I did in the 60s, all the way up to when Mary Ann had the business, you got hooked on that taste, that smoked taste that was in it.
I have had it in Columbus, and it's close, but it's no cigar, but it's good. And when they opened up the Chicken Comer's here on Dillingham Street, it was close. It just is not the same. Right. It may be the way they slice it, or how can a Boston butt be different? But it might be a different kind of Boston butt. I don't know. Maybe it was the sacred barbecue grounds. I do think so, and it could very well be. I don't know. I just I know it was not the same, and we ate. I mean, we still went out there and ate because we loved salsa, but it never was the same. Right. Not after he died. He just had the magic touch, didn't he?
If Chick was here now, I'll tell you how we ate meat, hot sauce. It was really nice. But those days are gone. Say, it's just like Chick, but still, no, something is missing. It's nice, don't get me wrong, it's nice, but nobody never barbecue like Chicken Comer. The sauce that they have is watery. It's not thick. We had some good times in there eating them skins. If they could call back time.
But it's kind of weird having hot dogs and sandwiches and stuff. I think when the Screws moved into that bigger building in Phoenix City, that was the end for the Phoenix City Chicken Comer's. When they started selling hamburgers and hot dogs, selling art and all kinds of weird stuff instead of just Chicken Comer's barbecue, I think that was one of the downfalls. But they should have just stuck with barbecue and sweet tea and stayed in one of those little old buildings with red checkered tablecloths. That was what was good. $3.50 plate, $4.50 plate. That's where it's at. And just plate of Chicken Comer's, white bread, sweet tea. They've kind of gotten away from that. They should have stayed in the old little building. That was what was best.
As I think back on how it used to be, I miss the old place. After all these interviews and doing all this research, I'm still at a loss when I try to describe what it is that made the old cafe so unique and special. It certainly was chicken comer, but it probably has something to do with the simplicity of serving meat, sauce, bread, and maybe some sweet tea, and getting away with it. He could do that because it was just so darn good. In discussing all the incarnations of Chicken Comer's barbecue that have existed since 1968, when Chick died, I asked James Stafford, who cooked there for many years during the 60s and 70s, what he wished had happened. Was it better to have the Chicken Comer's name carried on, or would it have been better just to let it go and not have any cafe with the name Chicken Comer? If it's not Chicken Comer running it, then don't call it Chicken Comer's barbecue. James said it would be best just to let it go. He's gone, so his name should be gone, out of respect for Chicken Comer.
Guy was Andy Weistrack. He was originally from Los Angeles, California, played football with Gary Beeman at UCLA. And big old guy, big strapping guy, you know. And so we pull up in front of the place, and he looks, he said, "We're not going to eat here." "Yeah? No, we're not going to eat here." "We're going to eat here." So we get out and we go in. And this is after integration, so we sat over on the right-hand side, which would have been the old colored side, and sat down in one of the church pews. We ordered the biggest plate they had, which I think back then was about a $4 plate, $3 or $4. And Lynn and myself ordered, and he says, "I want the same thing they're having." He said, "We don't get any stew or French fries or anything." I said, "Nope, meat and bread, that's it." So anyway, he gets the same thing. We sat down over there to eat, and he wouldn't touch it. He sat there, and we ate our entire plate before he would ever touch it. So finally, just as we're finishing up, he decides to take a bite. After he finished that plate, he went back and got another one just like it. Ate 2 of the largest plates they had. And then he said, "You know, I've got to have a photograph of this place. When I get back to Los Angeles, nobody will ever believe this."
My Papa was my hero. I thought Papa could beat up anybody. He had all the money in the world. And if I just wanted something, I asked Papa for it. I remember my daddy and I got into it about a television show one time. He wanted to watch Combat. And I wanted to watch Lucy. And they came on at the same time. And so I went to Papa and I said, my dad won't let me watch Lucy.
And he
got me a TV.
A telephone, called to the furniture company and had him bring it out. And he said, "This is your TV. You don't have to let anybody watch that TV if you don't want to." And our big TV went out, and my husband wanted to watch. He said, "Papa told me I don't have to let you." And he meant that whatever she said she wanted, that's what he would get for her.
I really just remember him being, I was little, but he just seemed really tall to me, like extra tall. I don't know how tall he was really, but at the time I thought he was 7 footer or whatever.
This is this rhythm.